It's been a while. We're back. Welcome. It's been about 352 years since we filmed the last video. Let's not beat around the bush. I've been building my magnum opus, if you will. Omniscient Insights is built. It's free for you guys to go and all and have a look. The products on there, they're not free, but there are free materials for you to have a look at and get involved in. That's there. So now we are here. We're looking at baby reindeer. Let me tell you all about how we're going to be doing this. There was an idea a little while back that I put out on one of the podcasts. It seems that this kind of body language tactic in this particular way has some ethos of believability around it. So we are here to fly in the face of all of that, right? I can tell you a little bit about my background because it's my background. I don't mind telling you about the private investigations business that I'm involved in, or my EP enterprise that I have based in America, or any of the other shit that I've been up to in the past few years. But that already is acting as a way to try and bias you into thinking about what it is that we have to say about whatever it is that we go on to. So you'll find that these guys on the internet are going, hi, I own the CIA, and hi, I'm actually the president of somewhere, as a way of giving some kind of credence, or I have 500 billion followers, therefore I'm the most important person in this particular field. And what we're saying with this way of doing things is we're going to cut to the crux of the things that matter when it comes to the nature of reading a person. And I do things this way mostly because when I say buzzwords like reading a person or body language, people in the field lose their minds. Because body language doesn't exist. If you think body language exists from somebody that's told you that, they are delusional, dishonest, or both in that way. So we're coming at it from the background of properly assessing the material that it is that we're seeing out in the quote-unquote real world. And I've brought a series of individuals who are affectionately entitled a group of mercenaries. Leave that to your interpretation as to where the bodies are hidden. These are my friends, and we've trained together for a great many years. Your names will be secret. We'll treat this like the internet. If anybody really wants to find out, they can. Suffice it to say, these are the people that have been training with me for, how long is it now? About 48 years, 49, something like that. It's been a good long time. Been a good long time anyway. So we've got a series of what I would consider professionals from a very diverse collection of backgrounds in order to really get together and bring you our take on how you critically assess information that can be observed, right? Because it's not just all about, oh, this elbow moved in this way, therefore this. As we've said many times, there are a number of points, a number of opinions, and a number of variables to consider towards anything that we interact with when we're dealing with the social parameters of, you know, reading a person. Calm down, it's a buzzword. Okay, so what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to get into the first clip, and then we're going to talk about it. All right, shock horror, I know. So here we go. Here's the first one.
They would view you.
I think they are going to think what I think about Richard Gere, that he's completely off his head. And I'm not worried about the current one because he's a lawyer and he.
So you currently have a boyfriend?
Me, yeah.
He's a lawyer?
Yeah.
In London?
Doesn't matter where he is. You know, I'd rather.
No, I understand, but how long have you been?
5 years.
You've been in a 5-year relationship.
Yeah, so I don't.
So what does he think?
I don't want to drag him in. He thinks this is horrendous. All of my lawyer friends do, all of my professional friends do, other people do. People are being really sympathetic. People I don't know are saying things like, "Are you getting hounded in the street?" You know, people are being really, really nice.
Why? First of all, let's like, are we back doing this? Right? I mean, we could say there is a bandwagon effect. at play. There is a bandwagon effect. This is one of the biases and fallacies that pop up in the way that we humans critically connect towards information. Everybody's jumped on this particular TV show, therefore it's deemed important, and therefore any darker or more positive issues that are brought to light as a result are multiplied by default. And the bandwagon effect, when we believe or do something because many other people also believe and do that thing. So that was particularly important towards us here, because there is speculation and the, what do they call them, the internet sleuths or the online sleuths. There was a word that came out when we watched the haunted hotel video years ago. That was particularly funny in that way. So guys, of that clip, whoever it is that wants to go first, because that would imply me saying a name, and I aren't gonna. Okay, so whoever it is that wants to go first, jump in first with your assessment of that particular clip in relation to the, let's call them the displays. Let's call them the displays of Miss Harvey. Let's be courteous.
I'll jump in. I'll take it.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I'll get the ball rolling.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
I mean, when she initially answered the question, there was like a big, like what they call eye flutter, or like a. I mean, you watch videos and people are talking about this is eye blocking. This is, but given this context, I don't think we can take anything in isolation.
No.
You'd sort of have to see how she. I mean, she might answer a trivial question like that. We don't. We're only going on this. So I think to sum it up, we'd have to say in this context, in this, it may mean this, but for more clarity, we would need to see X, Y, Z, see her in a different range of emotional states. Because at the minute, she's in the spotlight. She's going to be stressed out. So the thermos are going to reflect this.
Perfect. And just to kind of cover that as well, thermos is it's connected to the way that we apply the scientific underpinnings that go into the understanding of interactions around human beings. It's we refer to it as human thermodynamics in that way. It's the interplay and the interaction of energy exchange that's guided towards motivation of movement. And the eye flutter is traditionally connected towards a heightened flutter of anxiety, which in that particular context can be connected to hiding information. It can. But just as you rightly state, she's under the spotlight, it can also just be readily connected towards somebody who is actively aware of a hot button topic that involves her coming up, having particularly strong feelings about it, right? So if I were about to start talking about my boy Cookie, if the eyelid flutter was in my behavioural lexicon, there is a chance that could happen because there is a heightened degree of emotions from something that makes me feel something very strongly. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm hiding, right? We would need, as he rightly stated, the additional points of information, and I bring these up. I love these. These are from Escaping Ordinary. It is their Cognitve Biases flashcards, and I'm not associated with them, not affiliated with them, but it's a great way to bring in an excellent learning curve to this particular material. The curse of knowledge. When we know something, we tend to assume that everyone else knows about that thing as well. But what we feel that we know is all about Martha, because we've watched a true story based on we've watched a Netflix episode that is based on a true story. There is a bias that's inherent there. And when it comes to the notions of something that's contained within the contrast effect, when we compare something to something else, the contrast effect enhances the differences between them and distorts our perception. So we're trying to contrast Martha with Fiona and not being able to step out of the influence of everything that we've been involved in from the storyline of Baby Reindeer. How can we properly critically connect to what it is that we're seeing? So guys who haven't spoken yet, jump in. What's your assessment of that breakdown?
The thing for me that adds on to what's already been said is, I think that's absolutely on the money for me as the start of this. But what also follows on is the context as well, the environment that she's actually placed in. So all these internet sleuths have ran out and they have found this woman, and for whatever reason, have deemed her as this person who needs to be hunted down because she categorically done this. So in this scenario, she's come to an arena that she doesn't know, with people that she doesn't know, with information in the background that's potentially been thrown at her before she sees Piers. Piers is also quite confrontational in some ways, so not knowing what way those questions will be directed at her will automatically heighten those feelings that she's got, because she doesn't know if she's going to be attacked. She doesn't know what way it's going to be framed. She doesn't know whether she's going to be put on, some other form of like sort of pedestal in a different way. Is it going to be more flattering to her? Is he going to play to her? Is he going to attack her? So yeah, rightly so, I agree with everything that's been said, but the context has got to be taken in as well, because all of that plays into what you're seeing there. And the eye fluttering, the blink rate, it's not on its own indicative of deception or anything else. It is just, as has been stated, higher brainwave. She's processing more information, and that all comes out as a natural byproduct, as you said, if it's in her lexicon.
How about you, mate? Our remaining person. Sorry, this is me actively trying to inhibit how I talk, because I know all these people. We hang out. Right? So, Rob, I would say name of...
Hey, you.
Hey, you go. Poke you with the stick.
I would say in this clip and throughout the whole interview, one outstanding principle that struck me was her head movements, which also kind of throws into the context that we were just talking about, because we don't know if those types of head movements are normal behavior for her, or if they're a response of nerves because of the situation she's in. But it did strike me that they're not necessarily considered a natural movement in general conversation that you might normally have. So that's what struck me, is also higher brainwave state. She's paying very close attention to what's being asked of her and how she's responding. And you can really tell that in her motions.
100%, right? There is an untold aspect to the newsroom interview with a strong character, in that whoever it is that is the interviewer has to try and be a social engineer of sorts. So when she's talking about her boyfriend and the like, the head movements in that, the flutters, and they're not doing anything to help the interaction with Piers. Objectively, from our standpoint, we can review the information in the context they're in, but in terms of Piers's understanding, whether he picks up on this consciously or not, he's going to sense anxiety and try and play into that. Right? The one thing that lets her down is when she speaks about something and all of a sudden it's like somebody snipped the marionette strings, and she goes like this and just drops the head down. That could not be any more of a non-verbal block if it tried, without doing this type of behavior in that particular way. But one could make the argument that she's trying to protect the identity of her boyfriend. But one could also make the argument that by virtue of the heightened degree of anxiety and the previous protective elements over seemingly insignificant data, that the boyfriend is ethereal. Right? Ethereal. And that's why there is a degree of sunken cost fallacy in these particular dynamics that we need to bring to the field, which is why I'm not a big fan of these kinds of videos in that way. But there's people that I've invested all of my time into a true story and I've got really involved in it, and somebody's given me more. I want to find elements that confirm. So we're stepping into confirmation bias. How prepared are we to critically assess the information that's in front? We can't say one way or the other. We're not involved. Akin to the sunken cost fallacy and confirmation bias, we've also got Occam's razor. The simplest solution is normally the correct one. It's almost likely true. It's written on the card much more eloquently than I just said it, but I'm very tired and I'm very intellectually engaged at the minute, so I want to say about 12 sentences at the same time. Right? So this is the type of connection that we need to make. There is also hedonic adaptations to consider. In our quest for pleasure, we have a tendency to pursue one pleasure after another. And it's been written about in terms of the... I would refer to it as weird pleasure, but it's still a pleasure all the same. I would refer to it as a weird pleasure because I don't get pleasure from it. In the amount of people that fall asleep to like true crime documentaries and, you know, watch gratuitous horror movies for fun and these kinds of thrillers, and, you know, they get this sense of pleasure from mystery and, oh, it's a true story and this type of evil goes on in the world, but they're separated from it. So now there's a continuation brought into more of a real life moment. There's something to consider when we look at the status quo bias that we develop within our connection to the ethos surrounding baby reindeer. We prefer things to stay the same. Any change from the baseline is perceived as a loss. If we were to come out now and discover that Richard Gadd made it all up, would people be as readily accepting of that material in that way? I don't know. Her thermos at the minute certainly speak to hiding a great deal of confirmation and hiding a great deal of detail in that way. So we're going to do this next clip a bit at a time to try and support that. If I can figure out what the right button to press is. There's a real glow in that one.
You do. And you've been emphatic in the number of denials you're making here.
That's right.
But many of those things that I've put to you can be proven.
You're talking about emails and an email trail thing.
All that.
You know, all of that. You're obsessed with... sorry, I don't mean to be horrible.
I'm not obsessed with anything.
You've gone on at length for a good 10 minutes about the emails.
Well, only because the emails...
Because it's a vast number.
Well, there's a huge number, and voice messages. The voice messages he's kept, apparently, and there is...
He was maybe typing me in the Holy Arms. I don't know if he's got any voicemail.
But if he has 300...
The thing that strikes me as a side note, as a study of human movement, is when she said that taping me in the Holy Arms, and she did this little head thing, you know, like a movement. The actress in the show has that down to a T. And whether she knew that ahead of time or didn't, or it's a coincidence, I neither know nor care. But it's those types of things that just make the show a little bit more intriguing for me. Anyway, folks, what do we make of that, first of all, before we go back to the continuation of it?
We're going in the same order.
We've developed a Britishness about it. Oh, no, you go first. Oh, you go first. Oh, I'm so polite. You go first.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the whole interview. But this bit, it sort of more confused me than anything, was the statement. He said he's got voice messages. Yeah, she's saying it could have been a voice recording. Now, if ever this came out and the phone was sort of investigated, they would show up as different. A voice message, they're even in different places on the phone. To my knowledge, I don't know if you can send a voice message to somebody.
I can confirm it. Yeah, they are.
So that's just an anomaly. I mean, it's littered with anomalies, but yeah, that was. I mean, I made a note of some of them. That was one of them.
Love it. And you know, in relation to that, she tries to kind of lessen the implications of it. You know, you've been going on about the emails and always something about just the number of them, isn't it? And when the information, no, the content of them is actually pretty, it's pretty, how can we say this in a politically correct way? Pretty full on. Right. So yeah, it's a great chat. What about from you guys?
So from just to pick up on that as well, the way it came in almost as a sort of deflection, like she automatically knew, where that was going to be heading, and it's like, no, draw the line in the sand, cut that off. Here's what I want you to know, rather than me listening to what is actually being said, because for whatever reason, I'm going to have to come up with something else on the fly. But I've also seen the whole interview, and she makes a reference of saying that not only could somebody have recorded me, she's not understanding, or she's not taking in or bothering to listen, because she's got her own narrative going on. Somebody could have recorded me in the pub. Somebody could have used a dictaphone. Somebody else could have sent those messages of a conversation in the pub. I didn't have his phone number. Well, if it's a voice message, you don't need to have somebody's phone number. You can send it through, WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever media you choose to use. So is it the fact that she didn't actually know that, given the fact that she's had more than one smart device and she had numerous email accounts? Because you can send voice notes over email. So there's just that for me was kind of like something that was outstanding. And it's not the fact that I don't think for one second that she doesn't understand what it is. It's just her trying to put across, from the way I see it at the moment, her narrative to try and preempt, draw a line in the sand, cut it, and be able to move on as quickly as possible.
Don't disagree. You go. You say things now.
I'm going to build off the deflection idea, because I wholeheartedly agree with that, especially in her first part when she talks about Piers being obsessed with the email idea. When that part made me laugh the first time I watched the interview, because she was the one going on and on and on about the number of emails and trying to play up how extreme 41,000 emails was. And now she's claiming that he was the one doing that. So she's building up how it's almost like at times she's building up how extreme these things are with the emails and the voicemails, but then downplaying it in other situations when they're talking about the other aspects of this situation that were more extreme than that, to say, oh no, the emails and the voicemails weren't that big of a deal. But she's very much trying to formulate her answers in the current moment to how she wants to be seen overall, and it contradicts herself.
This is the prime notion of where we like to go further on what it is to understand a person. It's so much more than just how they move during what they say. There is the interplay of what they say, when they say it, how they say it, when they say something specific, if it changes, if a similar topic comes up later, how that looks reference. There is a wide resource of information that we need to call back to at any given stage, right? So let's see how that continues.
50 voice messages and it's you.
It doesn't mean the drama is true.
But is it possible he's got 350 voice messages?
I doubt that very much. I just don't think so.
You doubt it?
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, unless
wouldn't
he's been taping me.
I mean, if you've never really contacted him, if he's
he
got
could have been taping me in the Holy Arms, though.
But if he's got 350
I've not contacted
but if
him.
these are on his phone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether they're on a phone, tablet, whatever they're on. I've not contacted
But I'm curious, why would there even be a possibility of him having that number of voice messages?
I mean, let's come back to that, because it's heating up at the jury. It's heating up a little bit at the minute, right? But so much in that little period alone. There's the gestural retreat. There's the lean back. There's the extended eye blink. There is the I don't think so over a particular situation that has no grey area, right? You either did or you didn't. Did you kill this person? I don't think so. What? What are you even saying? So there is a purposeful disconnect from the information in that scenario. We have to entertain, now that she is pursuing, saying that she is pursuing libel cases and the like. So we have to entertain, in order to connect to this information properly, the possibility of the other side. Right? I was speaking to you guys earlier. If we have 2 + 2 = 4, what's the easiest way to know that it is to try and prove that it isn't. Right? So the easiest way for us to try and understand if what she's saying is false is to try and see if it's true. And there are so many elements to this, of when she's saying and how she's saying it in the context of these elements, that don't align. There are immutable truths. To a voicemail only picks up background noise in a very loud, very busy environment, a busy train station, outside of a football stadium and the like. If you're in a bar, you might pick up glasses clinking in the background or somebody laughing and whatnot. But if you are surreptitiously recording somebody for somebody to listen back to that, there is an active, audible difference between that and a voicemail that's been left by the phone, in terms of background noise and the way the voice interacts with the, I don't know whether you call it the speaker or the sound receiver in the phone or whatever it is. It sounds distinctly different. So what do we make of that then, guys, now that there has been a veritable gear shift in terms of the information that we've seen?
Well, I think it was just before this bit, there's ambiguity with I think it was the tweets as well. She went from I don't know to, I think it was either 16 or 18 maybe. I mean, that's quite a leap. So it's sort of that I don't know all this. It's sort of not in isolation. This is sort of starting to build a pattern of. So I'm starting to entertain the idea that maybe there is something here. I mean, I don't think it's black or white.
No, God no.
This whole thing. This has got elements of grey, truths, non-truths littered. So I think that's making it harder to decipher what's going on. But I think if you look at it from the angle that there is light and dark in this, then it's easier to sort of navigate. If that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, totally, mate. Totally get you. Thank you.
I think adding on from that, here we go again, same order. Adding on from that as well, you mentioned, Ben, that there's a clear gear shift. So it's obviously more emotionally charged for her. Now, is it emotionally charged because, oh, well, no, it's not true? Or is it emotionally charged because she knows that this question was coming and she doesn't have a definitive answer either way? Because if, and it is sort of a big if all this went to court and, Richard had all this information, it would all come out in disclosure, all of it. So at the moment, she's being kind of, it's more defensive, it's more protection, it's more a case of, how dare you question me on this? I have no idea. But the thing is, for me, I wrote down, she doubts it's 350 messages, but isn't sure, yet didn't deny a damn thing in that way. And I'm pretty damn sure if I'd sent 350 voicemails or voice messages to somebody, I'd know that I'd sent that many. But that automatically tags in with the emails are brought up, 41,107, I think it was. But he asked her, did she send that many? As she said, and I quote, even if I had sent these emails, it doesn't mean the rest is true. What a very, very weird statement to make.
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, and I'm not saying Merc One has alluded to. It's a case of all of this information that is out there. It's littered. It's grey areas. You've got 6 of one. You've got half a dozen of the other. Someone's been painted in this light, but nothing's essentially been disclosed from the other angle. So all you're doing at the moment is reading, everything from the thermos, the tone of voice, the pitch, the intonation, the brainwave states, the thermo shifts, everything else in between. But categorically at the moment, you can sit there and say something's not right. But definitively, the more she is challenged and the more it's pressed, the more defensive she is getting. So I instantly go, why? And what are you hiding around that? Because you understand how easy it is to be able to have this verified. So for me, there's definitely an emotional charge shift here. And what we're likely to see, and I've seen the video, but for anybody else who hasn't, what you're likely to see going forward is that kind of change again, and her being forced into more of the slip up, which is where the email sort of sentence came out. Even if I had sent these emails, it doesn't mean the rest is true. But that can also be argued for the messages, the voicemails, the tweets, the texts, and every other medium that you can contact somebody in, even to the personal interaction in the bar or wherever it was.
Yeah, love it. Just a couple of things I want to jump in on that before you go. If you watch this interaction with this understanding of the way a child lies, in that they have the story they can tell, they'll commit to it up to a point. Oh, you can completely dismantle it, sweet. I'll concede to that. Fresh story. Oh, you can completely. I'll concede to that. Oh, I'll fresh. Oh, you can completely prove. And that seems to be the way it's gone throughout the course of the interview. I bring this up again, these cards up again, not this particular one, because we've been able to acknowledge a certain number of biases with the way that we, as the viewers, would interact with this particular stream of information. There is just as much significance for the proposition of biases against peers and biases from peers in this particular scenario. You look at Fiona in relation to the backfire effect. A tendency to become more committed to your beliefs when they are challenged. Being incorrect about certain ideas can feel like an attack on our identity. This bias can lead to us doubling down on a hypothesis despite confirming evidence. And the illusion of control, which is defined as our belief that we control events more than we actually do. The floor is yours, mate.
You actually took a lot of the words right out of my mouth when you started.
I apologize. Let's move on.
But,
No, I'm kidding.
you're good. But I mean, this whole situation does have gray areas from both sides, right? But to some extent, the evidence that could be brought forth in discovery has to be a black and white. Either she did a certain amount of emails and voicemails, or she didn't. And it just, you can tell that there is something off by how she will confirm that she maybe did some of them, but then only concedes that after a certain point in the interview, when she started out at the very beginning saying she didn't have any contact. And at another point in the interview, Piers starts reading some of the tweets she'd posted back to her, and she gets very defensive then, how she does right at the beginning of this clip, saying that that doesn't mean that the series is true. Even if she did do these things, she really is defending an argument like a child would, where, okay, I'll concede this point, but I'm not going to admit anything else further because I want to keep a certain picture going.
Politicians are just as bad. They're just as bad. Anyway, let's look at things a little bit further on. We have 2 clips left for you guys, so you can measure your cups of tea accordingly. I'm speaking only to my British audience, of course.
Is that true?
I appear to have written most of the show in my sleep. I dressed
Did you have a baby reindeer?
I had a toy reindeer.
So that's true.
And he'd shaved his head. That bit is true. And there were reindeers in the shops. It was Christmas time or something. It was a joke. So I have inadvertently penned the name of the show.
Right, but that is true.
That's true. That's a true fact.
Whilst bantering with you, Richard Gadd told you he'd like to hang your curtains. Is that true?
This, I think, was a holy arms joke about curtains and a lot of sexual innuendo.
He did say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it true that you caught Richard Gadd looking through your window after he followed you home one day?
False.
You never saw him at your house?
I didn't see him at my house. I think it would be impossible to look through a window.
Did anyone else ever see him there?
No.
So as far as you were concerned, he never turned up at your place?
Correct.
But the Netflix show has him doing that?
Yes, I believe so. I've been told that.
But that categorically didn't happen?
That categorically didn't happen.
Even that in that small mismanaged section, she's spoken very well up until that stage about how much she's watched the show and these things that are right and they're wrong, and then all of a sudden, yes, I've been told, yes, I didn't actually watch it. Oh, but you said, okay, got it. So in those particular moments when we can deconstruct that, we get further support for the thermo displays where there would be, let's call it protection of information from Mrs. Harvey in that way, where she's trying to actively control the kind of information. So we get further support for the flutters, for the nods, for the blocks, for the touching of the drink, yet very... What tickles me, and it's not actually tickling, but more of an observation, a quirk, if you will, in that when somebody experiences a heightened state of anxiety, one of the things that can happen is really shallow, quick breathing. I'm mimicking it with my hands because if I breathed in that way, you couldn't see it, right? And so one of the outward ways that we can see that is a dry mouth. It's a dry mouth because you're not closing your mouth. I'm over-exaggerating it, so I might sound a bit like an obscene phone call, but it will dry out the mouth quicker. So either one of two things will happen. You will keep having to, when the unconscious awareness of discomfort comes up, you go, oh no, I'm giving too much away. Soothe, self-soothe. Or you drink, right? Which she dabbles into incrementally quicker throughout specific moments where there is a heightened degree of focus on her antics as a quote-unquote alleged stalker at this particular stage. So there's further support for this observation in that way. We can't forget the pressures of being on television, right, that are equally prone to anxiety. We can't forget them. And there has been the possibility of mental health concerns brought onto the table. We don't know what they are at the minute, but they would be affecting what people en masse would consider normal in that way. And that skews a certain understanding of this. What we can say at this moment is there is a heightened degree of anxiety that points to heightened degree of focus on lessening the impact of certain information and lessening the reveal of truisms in that particular way, right? So she's actively checking what it is that she says whenever she's spoken to. Right, guys, what did you make of that?
It's funny I should mention the water because that was something in my notes. I mean, as at the start of the interview, he sort of has, an interview will have like sort of a frame, a structure. You start off quite slow, and then towards the end, he builds to sort of a bit of a finale. The questions get quicker, they get more intense, and it gets more direct. And with that, you mentioned that there's a corollary between the amount of water she drinks. It's sporadic, and towards the end, it's noticeably more. So it's just interesting to see the pressure go up and watching that, the sort of matching side by side. With the behaviours in that sort of clip, I mean, I'm not going to get into this means this, but when it feels like she's being more truthful, there's more of it feels a lot more natural. There's a lot more hand movements. I mean, predominantly still throughout the interview, when she talks about something that that is truthful, like when she was born, where she grew up. There's the naturality comes to it. So that, yeah, that's just sort of something that was pigeoned into that. I mean, it's
nice.
It doesn't mean anything, but it's just something to keep an eye on as it goes, you know, so you can build a pattern out.
It's an observable truism. We are making, as readers of information, our stand fighting against a stereotypical bias, which is defined as an expectation that a person or a group will behave in a certain way without evidence or knowing the person's true characteristics. We don't know Fiona's true characteristics. We have this interaction on TV and whatever anyone's found online. Right? So you are right to bring that up, in that we can discernibly see the difference in relaxation versus, oh, shit, the focus is on me, which does not help her case for truth. But we also can't deny the possibilities of the other side. Nice. Merc, you go. Poke you with a stick now.
I like that in the fact that what's already just been raised is ironically something I also had in my notes. So thanks for that. But if you're looking at it, we don't know essentially what this woman is like day to day, out and about, how she communicates, friends, family, interactions, so forth. So we've already covered the sort of context and the framework. But I completely agree. When she's more at ease, there's no holding back. You know, the thermos are more obvious. The hands are moving. She's more engaged. You know, she's more inclined to sort of lean forward, lean into it. But her voice tone and everything else also reacts the same. It softens. It's not as combative at all. Yet the lip licking, the keeping her mouth closed and licking around her teeth and moistening the inside of her mouth, that goes on a lot more when she's challenged, to the point when she's that emotionally charged, it's almost as if she's forgotten there's a glass of water right in front of her. And yet there's a couple of times within this interview where, when she's been challenged at specific points, it hasn't come to her face. It has just moved and just came in front. So we've got, one of the classic blocking behaviors where I could go, she's lying, But in context with everything else, the question is, for me, was that just more comforting? Was it actually a block? Does it mean it's actually a block? Who knows? You have to. I personally have to factor that in with that context at the time. But I've got a note here that says the avoidance of answering questions directly, putting the onus back on Richard, and stating facts as to how she believes him to be. Name calling, psychotic, didn't happen to him. But again, how can she know? This is all speculation. So she's been labelled as one thing. It's just as easy for her to throw that out. But when Piers at the end of that clip turns around and says that this can be found out and this can be tracked and traced and looked up, did you know? Yeah, you've got the classic mismatch. Yeah. It's like you then have to start to put all these pieces of information together, because this does not always mean this. Can I say that, something has actually happened? Is she categorically outright lying? There's definitely stuff in there that is bull. But is it about the whole thing? We don't have enough information, because at the moment we've only got one side of the story. But one thing is for damn sure, she's uncomfortable. She wants to put her side of the story across, and only her side at this moment in time.
You go. You say things.
In this clip specifically, what really stands out to me is both her head movements and her blink rate. You can notice, like, after she's done answering a question, her blink rate goes crazy, which is just more indicative to me of a high brainwave state and nerves, whether that be because she's on TV or because she's lying, or there could be any explanations to why. But we know she's uncomfortable in some manner. And I mean, as I said before, we can't know if those types of head movements are natural for her, but there are those mismatches with the nodding. And I don't know anyone whose natural head response is a circular motion, which is what hers was doing at the end of that clip. So, I mean, if that's natural for her, it's natural for her, but it is just another thing to bring in
it's an oddity.
mismatches with some of the verbal information she's giving.
100%. 100%. And in lieu of keeping everybody as aware of the biases that could be preventing them from understanding the information as critically as they possibly could, availability cascade. People begin to adopt a belief not because it's true or prevalent, but because of its repetition in public discourse. Just one for the viewers of this particular interview to think about. Right? She seems to have been tried in the kangaroo courts already. They're not actual courts. we very often forget that. Mostly because it connects to hyperbolic discounting. When we prefer immediate payoffs over delayed payoffs. Can't tell you the amount of comments I've got on my longer videos. I got one the other day on one of my previous body language ones. Too much rambling! What do you want? Yeah. Credits. This happened. Goodbye. It says more about you guys. You trolls really need to think about your comments because it reveals far more about you than it does us. All right? Right, we have one more left, and this video's already gone on far too long, and then we'll keep talking.
Categorically be taking legal action.
Absolutely, against both him and Netflix.
You said your boyfriend's a lawyer, so this can be done.
He's not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. Somebody else is.
Have you instructed lawyers?
We've instructed them in part, but we want to explore all the options out there. There are a number of people to sue. We can't all be in 10 courts all at once. So,
who else are you planning to sue?
The Daily Mail.
The Daily Mail have it coming. The liberal rag of nonsense. That's just a personal opinion on that particular way. So, Fiona, if you're watching, if you could sue the Daily Mail, you'd be pleasing all of the British public as much as possible. The question then becomes, guys, what do we think? Does she have any intention of suing them? Would she just like to sue them for the fact that she's been brought into the public eye? Where do we stand? Other than on our feet.
It's where it gets messy. I mean, it's where details will come out that will either put this case to bed or not. You know, so I really don't know. In my honesty, this is asked more questions than it's answered for me. It's sort of so personally, I don't. If I had to go with one or the other, I'm erring on the side of no. Because I think prior to this, we've seen some of the details sink in the details that will come out if this goes any further and stuff. So I think that's sinking in, and I think she's clutching at straws a little bit. So erring on the side of no.
You say things now.
I'm going to go with yeah, I'd agree with that. My first instinct, based on what I've seen and the way she's come across, is there's a lot of bluster there. There's a lot of emotionally charged rhetoric, for want of a better word, that comes out of the hole under her schnoz. But the one thing that I think has gone completely missed by all of these people who are breaking this down is that all points, I've got a note here, all points could indicate a form of deception, depending on which way you look at it, and we've already mentioned the bias. Yeah, as I've said, the context needs to be taken into account, but the one thing that everybody sort of latched onto is when Netflix put this out, not inspired by a true story, it says this is a true story. And that narrative alone is going to suck people into the point of going, holy crap, every single thing in this is as stated. And this started off as some form of play or something, and then Netflix took note of it. And if this was the case, and she was going to sue, the legal team behind Netflix would have had information regarding the emails and, you know, the voice notes and the tweets and everything else to make sure their backside was covered to the nth degree before this guy could put his story out. And if that is the case, and they didn't do that, their backside would be in a sling for a shit ton of money. But from what I'm seeing with this, if she can't handle Piers asking some questions that she blatantly knew was going to come up, and she is that defensive, that uncomfortable, where she ends up saying that, you know, Richard is basically psychotic and is a psychopath, no way in hell she wants to do that in a courtroom with it being dragged out, facing all that evidence. And you know, there are other elements to it as well. Can I see her doing it? No, not with just what's come. Obviously, I'd like more information, but I think everybody here would agree. I don't really want to delve into kind of like much more with what it is. But from what's come across and the way she's come across, now she's too protective of herself. She'll have her 5 minutes of fame. I can't see her stepping into a courtroom for what it's worth.
I agree that it is kind of hard to tell with the amount of information that we have. She very well could have consulted about suing, but I also agree that I would lean towards no, especially because she has conceded, even in this interview, to some of the implications against her with the emails and the voicemails. So she knows that no matter how extreme it is, there is that possibility of that information coming to light in a court setting where they would find all of it. And I don't think she would be willing to face that. Or being a lawyer, I don't think she would see any possibility in herself winning that to even be worth pursuing it.
There is one, I was almost going to say throwaway comment, but it's not throwaway, because with everything that's been said within this interview with her, Piers, I believe, asked her, you know, is she a liar? Does she lie? And her statement was, I don't lie. I only tell white lies when I absolutely have to. And then she went on to give a story about, you know, her dying neighbor. And she basically kind of like consoled her and says, you know, get a good night's rest. You know, we'll see you tomorrow, and all this sort of stuff, to try and portray a more humanistic, caring sort of angle. But even when doing that, you know, it's no, I completely agree. There's too much stuff that she's inadvertently sort of admitted to. She won't want any of that coming out, and I can't see her doing it.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewin. That's the same thing. This is the very behavioural definition of my dad's harder than your dad. You know, it's a person that's been caught, so when the defence is talking a big game. But we can't forget, here's a good analogy, we can't forget, there was a kid, I will reveal his name, his surname, in due course, because it makes sense to reveal it in that way. There was a kid who in primary school, kindergarten, was saying, my uncle is Superman, and convinced of it. And he was getting in trouble with his teachers for lying. My uncle's Superman. Lying. So when the mum is spoken to, he keeps saying that his uncle's Superman, and we're trying to talk to him about lying and in the interaction with people. And his mum's like, no, he is. The kid in question, his surname is Cavill. And his uncle is Henry Cavill, who then obviously took him to school at the earliest opportunity in that particular way, right? Granted, that is a very mathematically slim example in the face of all this information that we've seen and spoken about. But we can't forget that. We can't forget it, because it keeps us critically connected to the information at this particular stage. So thanks, guys. You are all diamonds in your own respective form. And if you guys have enjoyed any part of that, not least of all this ridiculous shirt that I'm wearing, then by all means make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to, then don't. I can't really force you. This is a video after all. What I hope that you took from this is more of an objective outcome with the kind of information that we profess to be able to see in somebody's body language. With that in mind, check out the links in the description below for any related circumstance to this particular video. And we'll see you next time for another one. Take care.